As the cliche goes, April showers bring May flowers. But usually what comes after is the heat and dryness of summer. Hello again, Essay here. And before the hot weather of the holiday shows up, you should indulge in my new short story, The White Cat, a free exclusive on Substack. The links are down below in description. Join Margot Thompson, a beautiful stage actress and recent widow who finds salvation in the form of a white cat during a night of terror. While checking out my oddball thriller, remember that my Glitch series is still available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. The links are down below in the description. While you'll find my peculiar story about a white pussy entertaining, that doesn't mean I'm out of ideas. I still have more stories coming down the pike, so as long as I don't run into any mishaps, you'll see those stories as well. Now let's get back to the video. Hello again, Essay here. Back when I was a wee little kid, I heard about the hippie movement. Haight Ashbury and all the rest. Woodstock. Yeah. In fact, when I was a little kid, my family had the Woodstock album. And I remember seeing bits and pieces of the Woodstock film. And I thought it was wild. I thought it was crazy. But then there was that incident with Patty Hearst and the Sudanese Liberation Army. And man, that was nuts. Indeed, when those clowns went toe-to-toe with LAPD and had that massive shootout, it happened not too far from my house. Of course, we couldn't hear the shooting, but we could see it on TV news. And I remember my older brothers and sisters said, hey, they looked at the TV and said, hey, I know where that is. It was down there in South Central. They didn't want to go down there with all that shooting going on, but yeah. And it was just crazy. And LAPD ended up setting the house on fire where those clowns were. And for a brief period, people thought that Patty Hearst was dead, but she wasn't. Because apparently the SLA, they had went off into two groups. One group went in one location, and those people died, and the other group went in another location. And the reason why LAPD found out where they were was because, no joke, somebody tried to shoplift a pair of tube socks. Now remember, this was back in the 70s, and you would say, what? Yeah. Somehow one of the SLA men tried to boost some tube socks, and I guess they ran off, and the damn people at the store took down the license plate and gave the LAPD, and they checked it, and I guess they realized it belonged to a stolen car. And instead of just letting it slide, they eventually tracked down the car, and then the damn clown shot at the police, and then before you knew it, every cop in the county showed up, and it was only in the aftermath they found out that they were up against the SLA. So there you go. And I remember as a kid, because we don't live too far from the USC, University of Southern California, and I was in their library. I was part of some pre-college program called Upward Bound. Well, when I was there in the library, Doheny, they had the Anarchist Cookbook on the shelf. And I thought, what the hell is this? And I kind of skimmed through it, and I didn't quite understand. I thought it was like a cookbook for food, but I skimmed through. I said, "What is this? I don't get it." And so I just put it back on the shelf and kind of went on my way. And then, years later, I found out what it was. It was a book that was originally made up by the CIA to thwart would-be domestic terrorists. And everything in it was basically recipes for making bombs and stuff, except that the recipes were fake. And if you tried to use anything out of that so-called anarchist cookbook, the bomb would likely blow up in your face. And indeed, wait for it, anyone who remembers the Wetterman Underground, in fact, you could say that a lot of people may have heard of it after Obama, because one of his close associates, their parents were with the Wetterman Underground. And, wait for it, you ready? The guy who used to be the DA over there in SF, in San Francisco, yeah, before he got, before he got run out of town, yeah, his parents were the Wetterman Underground. Terrorist, for real terrorist. Well, anyway, this video is not really about the bad old days of 1960s radicalism. This video is about what's radicalism going on here and now. Because just like what was going on back in the late 60s and the early 70s, when you saw a bunch of hippies get really crazy and start throwing bombs, it looks like it's about to happen again. Now I'm going to show you a few clips from things that have just happened within the last 48 hours. And it's just absolutely wackadoodle. Now, and the videos are just self-explanatory, okay? Okay, and I'll show you these clips, okay? Are you ready? Here we go.
Palestinian protests have ignited at college campuses all across the country. At Columbia University, things are so bad that they've officially stopped all on-campus classes. All classes from now on for the rest of the semester are now remote and online. In an effort to try to bring the demonstrations under control, more and more college administrations are calling on police to clamp down on the demonstrators, but that only seems to be further enraging them. President Trump weighed in on the campus unrest, putting the blame squarely on bumbling Biden.
What's going on at the college level and the colleges, Columbia, NYU, and others, is a disgrace. And it's really on Biden. He has the wrong signal. He's got the wrong tone. He's got the wrong words. He doesn't know who he's backing. And it's a mess. And if this were me, he'd be after me. He'd be after me so much, but they're trying to give him a pass. And what's going on is a disgrace to our country. And it's all Biden's fault, and everybody knows it. He's got no message. He's got no compassion. He doesn't know what he's doing. He can't put two sentences together, frankly. He is the worst president in the history of our country. And again, what's going on is a disgrace.
Now, in addition to the potential political fallout from all of this, what is definitely happening here with these protests is an absolute financial disaster for these universities. The latest high-end donor to back out is New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft. He said that he's no longer donating to Columbia University in particular, and he joins a whole host of high-ranking donors who are pulling their financial contributions away from these universities in absolute disgust as to what they're seeing on all of these campuses and the failure among university administration officials to really do anything about it. And that's, of course, largely because these administration officials have fostered it. They've largely cultivated this kind of cultural Marxist dissent. And a number of people are starting to ask questions about that. Here's Tudor Dixon on Fox News.
But now that you see students in danger, I mean, the president of Columbia is saying they're holding classes virtually because it's not safe. Clear these people off of campus, because if it's not safe, it's not a protest. I think that's where we have to acknowledge that if the students are no longer safe on campus, this is not a peaceful protest, and that's what's legal. If you go beyond peace, then you have to be taken away. You have to have police on campus, and these people have to be taken away. Campus needs to be safe for our students. At this point, we don't even know who these people are. We don't know if they are students on the college campus because you cannot see their faces. It is incredibly dangerous. And the fact that these university presidents are waffling on this, what does this say about our universities and the liberalism that has invaded our universities? And now, like I said, this is going into radicalization. This is incredibly dangerous in the United States.
Yeah, it's
dangerous and discriminatory. Right? Yesterday, we saw quite the scene at Columbia University. A Jewish professor by the name of Shai Davidai was barred from the grounds of Columbia University because administration officials couldn't guarantee his safety. You can't make this stuff up. They locked him out from the campus because they couldn't guarantee his safety. Take a look.
Media in, is the university keeping the media out? This is the COO of the university. Are we not letting the media in? What? Can you back up, please? My card has been deactivated? Why? Can you back up, please? Wait. Everybody, my card has been deactivated. This is Cass Holloway, the COO. This is Gerald Lewis. They were in the meeting where I asked them if Hamas is a terror organization, and they couldn't say that it is a terrorist organization. Why? I'm a professor. Why can I?
Shai,
No, speak out loud so the media
Shai,
can hear.
we are willing to take you to the math lawn.
No, I am a professor here. Wait, everybody quiet. I am a professor here. I have every right to be everywhere on campus. You cannot let people that support Hamas on campus and me, a professor, not go on campus. Let me in now. Let us in. No.
The Babylon Bee responded with their satirical wit. Ivy League University installs Jew detectors at all entrances. Again, I mean, it's beyond insane. And you got to be asking, how on earth did all of this happen? Where did this come from? In order to understand what's going on our college campuses here, we have to understand two interrelated dynamics that are intersecting here. This is true of the woke mind virus in general. There are two interrelated historical dynamics that have intersected and created what we now know today as modern-day wokeness. And they both find their origins in the thought of a radical cultural Marxist activist by the name of Herbert Marcuse and his notion of what he called repressive tolerance. The first dynamic is what we might call the sanctification of victimhood. This is the tolerance side of repressive tolerance. Wokeness is, in effect, the sacralizing of the victim. In other words, woke sensibilities see society, Western society in particular, as a binary between people who are victims of social oppression and people who are social oppressors. And the woke always take the side of the perceived victim and always denounce as morally reprehensible the perceived victimizer, the oppressor. But you may ask, how do we know who belongs to which group? Who qualifies as a victim and who qualifies as a victimizer? Well, according to cultural Marxists, the victim category is constituted by a number of minority groups that cultural Marxists have designated as historically marginalized. So these would be groups based on race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity. These all become the categories for determining who's the victim and who's the victimizer, right? Those who identify themselves in terms of those marginalized categories are by definition victims. And those who don't identify with those marginalized categories are by definition victimizers. So that's the first thing to understand here. Wokeness is the sanctification of the victim. The victim is always right. The victim and the victim's concerns must be made central to society. The second dynamic involves the repressive side of repressive tolerance. If the concerns of the victim are now supposed to be central to society, so as to finally overcome their social marginalization, that means that the systemic victimizing the oppressor has to be stamped out and excluded by all means necessary. The oppressor, by definition, must be repressed. And that includes anything that offends the victim group. Anything that offends the victim group is seen as a hostile act by an oppressor and is therefore a legitimate object of exclusion and repression. And so here's how the two come together. Just as the victims are identified by the racial and ethnic and gender groups they belong to, so the victimizers, the legitimate objects of discrimination and exclusion, are also identified by their racial, ethnic, and gender groups. In other words, white, male, Christian, and yes, in this case, increasingly Jews. Jews are now finding themselves on the oppressor, victimizer side of the social binary. And the key here is that they're on that oppressor side precisely because they're Jews, precisely because they're on the side of the Israeli occupiers. So they are literally being excluded, discriminated against on our college campuses precisely because they are Jews. This is the inherent racism, the inherent anti-Semitism of the modern left. Now, the good news in all of this is that all wokeness does is it ultimately splits the left. Victimhood, as it turns out, entails its own demise. Victimhood casts out groups that otherwise would have been on their political side, but are now being excommunicated for racial and ethnic reasons. And while this is happening, the right is totally uniting against anything woke. So wokeness splits the left and unites the right, thus guaranteeing its ultimate demise. So ironically, what we're seeing in this unrest on college campuses can be actually seen as the beginning of the end of all things woke.
Democrats across the country showed how weak they were in 2020 when they let their cities and states burn at the hands of BLM. Now Biden's in the driver's seat, and these radicals know that no one's going to hold them accountable. Even Fetterman thinks this is Biden's Charlottesville. He says, add some tiki torches, and it's Charlottesville for the Jewish students. Jihadi co-eds flooding the streets with flares, calling for an intifada. This is happening while Hamas still has Americans hostage. Fetterman, not as polite as I am.
It's completely reasonable to want a ceasefire or to have a different view on that. Absolutely, that's a democracy. But it is not appropriate or legal, or it's helpful to advance your argument if you show up in a Starbucks with a bullhorn and start yelling at people, and that doesn't make you noble, it just makes you an asshole.
Last night, around 150 wannabe jihadis were arrested at NYU after the NYPD was brought in to break up the terror encampments growing on campus. But the students and faculty, yeah, there's faculty there, didn't go peacefully. The Arab Spring break spreading west. California students took over a building and beat on police. These protests morphed from Democrats' Charlottesville to their very own January 6th in just a matter of days. The movement's out for blood and they're gaining steam. But Primetime's noticed something interesting about the makeup of these protests. A lot of women. We find it surprising. Hamas rapes women, kills babies. Not exactly the friendliest group of people to get behind. So why are women falling in love with Hamas? Dr. Chloe Carmichael's a clinical psychologist and a Columbia grad. She joins me now. So, doctor, why do we see such a strong ratio of women to men in these pro-Hamas protests?
I don't know, Jesse. That baffles me just as much as Queers for Palestine.
Yeah.
But as a clinical psychologist, I can say that women are higher on nurturance, agreeableness, and trust. And so I can only speculate that, women also do spend more time on social media. And so they are easily more influenced by social media, which we know does lean left. And if somehow they've got the idea through all this social media and kind of an agreeable nature of believing what's being said there, that Hamas is in some insane way the victim, maybe they feel the need to nurture or, protect Hamas Also, women are more likely to want to please authority figures. And as you mentioned, the faculty are even showing up, which is completely despicable at these university protests. On some level, women are graduating colleges at very high rates. It's a good thing in some ways that they like to please the professors, but you can see that it can really go off the rails if the professors are going in the wrong direction.
I wonder if they're getting better grades by showing up to the protests. That would be
we know that
radical
extra
form of
credit
extra
is
credit.
given. Exactly. Well, we know that extra credit is given for showing up and doing, quote, activism, and again, these are the same women that freak out about toxic masculinity if a man spreads his legs too wide when he sits down on the subway, and yet, they're out there chanting about Hamas. I think what also has happened is that women have sort of clicked into this oppressor-oppressed mentality, and they somehow see themselves as adjacent to whatever group, they're being fed as the oppressed group. And that's why, again, it baffles me, but you can have women that are going to, call the police if somebody misgenders them, and yet they'll also show up at a Hamas rally. It's baffling.
Yeah, you say women want to nurture. What about us? Men like to be nurtured.
Exactly. Well, but the thing is that women are no longer allowed to go and nurture just, good old-fashioned American men, because those are labeled as toxically masculine, right? And then with spending all this time on social media, which we know does lean left.
Yeah, well,
what can we say?
Not the Jesse Waters Primetime Instagram account, which you should check out. I highly recommend it.
Will do.
All right, you saw all that, right? I mean, these people are crazy. Absolutely nuts. And the worst thing about it is they're not even trying to hide that they're promoting and rooting for a terrorist group. I mean, could you imagine seeing something like this just a mere 20 years ago? People in the street rooting for Al-Qaeda while the damn was left the World Trade Center sitting there still smoldering. Could you imagine something that nuts? It makes you wonder what the hell's wrong with these people. I mean, don't they know that those clowns out there in the West Bank will slit your cotton-picking throat and have a good night's sleep afterwards? They think you're working for the damn people in Tel Aviv. Yeah, that's their bread and butter. That's who they are. And then you're wondering what is up with these people. I mean, it's just total wackadoodle. Now, of course, some people, if you saw in those videos, trying to excuse it, saying, "Oh, these people don't know what they're doing. They don't know who they're rooting for." I'm thinking no. I'm thinking no. Because just like back in the bad old days of the late '60s, early '70s, those people with the hate, with the damn Waterman Underground, they knew what they were doing. They weren't very good at their jobs, but yeah, they wanted to attack the police. They wanted to attack the federal government with bombs and stuff. And of course the SLA. I mean, those people, I mean, they were just total anarchy. Running around robbing banks, shooting at cops. And of course, to this day, some people think that Patty Hearst wasn't kidnapped. That she was part of the group from the start, and then that was the cover story in case they got caught. You know, whereas that she basically had, what's the cliche, Stockholm syndrome. And of course, anyone who remembers her trial when she finally did get caught, she was able to weasel her way out of going to prison forever. But in the modern internet era, you could say that some people are just brainwashed, just going along with the crowd. Yet at the same time, humans are not sock puppets. No, they have agency. And of course, there are cults, true. But even cults are not, what's the word for it? Completely and totally encompassing. Some people break away. Indeed, anyone who remembers the People's Temple knows that when Jim Jones went nuts and tried to basically shit can himself and the whole damn group, some people ran away. They said, "No, I'm not for the suicide pact." They ran off into the jungle, And indeed, the Scientologists, same thing. There are people who eventually snap out of it and say, "You know what? These people are nuts," and they leave. For example, anyone who remembers that TV show, Chicago PD? Yeah, that guy Wolf's show. The guy who makes Law and Order shows. Yeah, well, starred at the show, that gray hair guy. Yeah, he used to be a Scientologist. He said so. He was on this documentary called Going Clear. He said that, yeah, I used to be part of Scientologists until he snapped out of it and he realized these people are nuts, and he left the Scientology. And let's not pretend Scientologists, that is a cult, okay? Sorry, Tom Cruise. I like your movies, but brother, you're part of a cult, okay? Let's not even pretend. But the people out there in the street, are they culty? Yeah, I'll say a lot of them are. Are they totally brainwashed? I think some probably need to be put in a straitjacket in the rubber room. But are all of them? I'm thinking no. I think that some of them are totally radicalized. They know what Hamas is. They know what they stand for. And they're okay with that. And yet, so far, the damn authorities, though the cops and the courts, they're basically pussyfooting around these people. Almost not taking them seriously. And I'm thinking, yeah, you're not taking them seriously now, but how long is it going to be before these people show up with a bunch of ARs and start shooting up the courthouse? Or start throwing bombs underneath police cars like the damn SLA tried to do? Yeah. Because we already seen this happen already. Because anyone who saw what happened down there in Georgia, when the people, radicals, showed up at this police training center, I think it's called Cop City, and tried to burn the place down. And they weren't sitting there with protests, they were showing up there with bombs. They weren't very good at their jobs, though, because they were throwing these bombs, and these bombs, let's just say this, the bombs weren't wrapped up in like BBs and ball bearings to really cause, try to kill the cops. But they were throwing bombs at them. And I'm thinking, yeah. I mean, it doesn't take too many steps for them to go full Hamas and go in there with fully loaded ARs and start shooting at the cops. And indeed, if you remember that incident, one clown was armed and he did shoot at the cops. And of course, the cops killed that guy. Yeah, fill him full of holes, man, look like a replay of the damn Dillinger. Because this mess here ain't getting any better. It's getting worse. And I hate to say it, but I think before this year is out, you're going to start seeing these crazy people start throwing bombs. Real bombs. They ain't talking about these damn stupid, these homemade mortar bombs they stole from the local fireworks factory. I'm talking about real bombs, like pipe bombs or some kind of crazy bombs full of broken glass and bent nails. Be throwing it not just at the cops, but at ordinary people on the street. Yeah. I feel it's coming. And sooner than you realize. Only question is, what's the damn cops and the courts going to do then? I don't know. Because I have to admit, a lot of the courts have been totally culturally captured by these radical leftists. And unlike back in the 1960s and 70s, You got a lot of disreputable judges, and prosecutors, all those George Soros prosecutors, who are more than willing to let these people go. Yeah. You think Alvin Bragg, old fat Albert, you think he's the only one? Yeah. Well, Tim Pool said that we were going to, this 2024 was going to be a one humdinger of a year. Of course, he was referring to the election. But then who counted on this damn Hamas fervor to break out in the universities and into the streets? I certainly didn't. Well, that's all I gotta say about these crazy people out there in the streets. That's my opinion.